Hey guys, I'm live here today with none other than Manny Wolfe. We'll be discussing how to use charisma in your presentations and really start to unlock the creative and charismatic powers within our own voices. It's something I'm personally very excited for, and honestly, I don't think I'm going to give any more of an introduction here. I'm going to hand it over to Manny. How are you, my brother?
How are you, man?
Good. We're alive, it's all working, man. Let's see if people start piling on and we'll get into this presentation.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Let me know when you want me to release the slingshot, and away we go.
Slingshot, dude. You're crazy. Before we actually get into it, man, tell us a little bit about your background. How do you start doing what you're doing now, and what's the journey to this speaker training? We're not really calling that, are we? It's something. It's speaker training coupled with something more.
It is, man. It is. It's like the world's most valuable soft skill set, cleverly disguised as public speaker training. Because what I really teach is so much more than how to get up on stage and present, quote unquote, well. First of all, until you see it, no two people seem to be able to agree upon what a good presentation is. It's like one of those things that you know it when you see it. But it's like that old joke about pornography, right? What is pornography? I don't know, but I know it when I see it. You know?
I swear my conversations are getting weirder and weirder by the day. It must be the
So, but anyway, before we go too far off the road and into the field, what I teach is how to connect with other people, how to be able to predict the outcome of your interactions with others to a very, very high level, how to use body language, vocal tonality, storytelling to be able to command a crowd, keep one person interested in a conversation, speak from the front of the room. Or I don't teach in my main curriculum, I don't go into listening very much, but there's a separate thing that I do. And when you learn how to listen as well, then you get sort of a whole other level of what I guess I would call power. And so that's kind of the stuff I teach. It seems a little too big to try to package. And so what I do is I call it speaker training. I do it through my Deliver Like a Beast system. And right now, I'm doing it primarily in my 1000 Speakers Academy, which, by the way, is the only academy of its kind in the world. It has a built-in requirement that each person who joins has to pay it forward. And so,
just about to ask you about it, because that's fascinating. Could you tell people that, hey, Brian Kurtz is on the line. This is awesome.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah, can you tell us, what is a paid forward program? How does that actually work? Because it's really different. I think it's something that could be applied across the board with a lot of other trainings.
God, I'd love to see that. And in fact, one of my first students, she was so inspired by it that she did, for her pay it forward, she created what she calls the 500 Faces Academy, where she's doing the same, dramatically lowering the price to get in, and then serving people that they then have to go and serve other people. So it works like this. In a nutshell, I've reduced my one-on-one training fees dramatically. I mean, like really, really reduced them. And in exchange for the reduced price, each person publicly pledges on a video that they put on Facebook to be held accountable. And also they sign a pledge that I then put on my website, vowing to either mentor two other people. And the agreement there is that, let's say you do it, right? And I say, okay, Joss, you have to pledge to mentor two other people. And you're like, I'm on it. You would then get a video that documents you starting a mentor relationship with two other people, wherein you require each of them to mentor two other people when they're done with your training. And so theoretically, this could go on and on and on. And even though the program is only 6 weeks old, I've already got trees being planted in Kenya I've got trees being planted in Denmark. I've got people being mentored in Australia, the United States, and Canada.
That's insane.
You know what's so cool about it, man? Is the people that will benefit from this will never even know my name. They'll never even know it was from me, man. And I'm sure there are marketers out there just losing their shit when they hear that. They're like, why would you do that? Because, man, to answer your question out there, Mr. or Mrs. Marketer who's losing your shit listening to this, because for me, being of service is more important than providing a service. I want to make an impact, and I don't just say it, I mean it. So anyway, that's the spiel for the 1,000 Speakers Academy and how the pay it forward element works.
That's cool. Dude, we've got a few people on now, so let's jump into this. How do I become a charismatic son of a bitch?
Well, if you want to follow the path that I took, you have to go back in time, be born into a cult, and be brainwashed to believe that you'll never fit into society. Then you have to move to the middle of a ghetto where you're hated just for the way you look and fight every day for 4 years. And that has to launch you into a life of drugs, crime, jails, homelessness, despair. And then when you're 28, you have to choose in a clutch moment that instead of going and killing a man, you're going to disappear and turn your life around. That's how I learned it.
It's a simple shit, really.
Yeah, really par for the course. And by the way, that's the quickest I've ever told my life story. Charisma is always a learned set of skills, to answer your question. To be a charismatic speaker, there are some certain elements that have to be present. One is we have to let go of the fear of being judged.
Okay.
It's very important. In fact, that's crucial. The way we do that in the academy is that you have to post videos of your progress, and you have to reach out and have people hold you accountable and things like that. So there are other elements that have to be present for charisma to be present. One is, it's an interesting thing about charisma that it doesn't exist unless other people can see it. Right? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. If I'm alone and I'm just being the most charismatic guy in the world, I'm not actually, because there's no one there to say, oh, that's charismatic. So you have to have other people present. So it means in terms of the public speaking, you're going to have to get out there, get off your ass and go do the speaking.
I'm the most charismatic person in the world in my own bedroom by myself.
Exactly. But until you can prove it and have other people validate it. And then so I know what you meant, and I was having a little fun with you there.
Yeah.
According to the program, you first have to learn body language. Not only learn how to use it, but why it works the way it does, which is the first module. The second module is vocal tonality. Vocal tonality stacks right on top of body language, right? And when you have both of those, you then have your body and your tonality supporting your message. This is crucial, and it's game-changing for how charismatically you're perceived by others. On top of that, we put storytelling. So when you've got all three of those things and you can really use them to your advantage, everything you say begins to take on a life of its own.
It's sounding super complex, yet super powerful at the same time. It's like, Robert Barker, say something awesome.
What, he wants me to say something awesome? Or are we having him say something awesome?
There's a lot of pressure here.
Robert Barker, how's this? Something awesome.
No, we need to get your voiceover, your podcast voice, whatever that is.
This is my podcast voice.
Right. Jesus. Okay. Cool. So, body language, tonality.
Yeah. And
story.
I argue that it's not all that complex. in the whole curriculum, there are a couple of predictable sticking points that most people stick in. But like, I'll give you a little bit of body language training right here and now.
Okay.
But first, I want to tell you why it works. And this is crucial. This is super important to understand, Robert Barker. We are always sending messages with our physicality, with our body language, whether we like it or not, right? And so we have two choices. We can either default to whatever body language we're presenting that we're not aware of, which, by the way, you and I had a little talk before we went live about how vocal tonality is really connected to emotional experience. So is body language. So if you're insecure, it's likely you're going to have your shoulders rolled forward a little bit. Your head is going to tend to be down, things like that, because you don't want to be drawing attention to yourself. If you're insecure, but you're masking it with bravado like a lot of men do, you're going to square your shoulders up. You're going to lift your chin high, right? You're going to make too aggressive of eye contact, things like that.
You guys
Well,
this shit.
Yeah, the puffed up chest syndrome. Well, here's the thing to understand. Each of us has mirror neurons inside of us, and these are kind of all the rage right now. Do you know what mirror neurons are? Should I explain it to your peeps?
Explain it to my peeps, because
okay.
as thick as I am.
So, when someone you care about, when someone smiles at you warmly and authentically, it's very difficult not to smile back, right?
Yeah, it's a
when you see someone you love happy, you feel happiness. When you see someone suffering, you feel empathy. When you see someone angry, it makes you either angry or recoiling. That's mirror neurons in action. They are responsible for our ability to empathize with and react appropriately to the emotions of other people. Without these, we would all be like Asperger's syndrome narcissists.
Are you reading?
In other words, huh?
Are you reading the Facebook or?
I don't understand what you're asking me.
Okay, someone just literally posted, I need a little bit of help in this area. I have Asperger's syndrome. And literally like 2 seconds after they posted that, you just...
Oh, wow. No, that was just a coincidence.
Okay.
If you literally have Asperger's syndrome, to the best of my knowledge, you have to become a mimic. You have to manually learn the correct reflective emotional responses. And so, whoever you are, if you want to message me and talk about this privately after we're done here, I'm open to that. But that's out. I'm not going to pretend that's in my area of expertise. It's sort of peripheral to what I do. But the reason that body language is so powerful is because we respond to the emotional content behind the gestures of other people.
So, conversely, if we're projecting an image at someone else, they'll project the same image back to us. So, if we're wanting to have ourselves received warmly, we need to provide warmth, and if we want to get people to have confidence, we need to provide confidence, etc.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And in some cases, though, it's the compatible emotional response and not the same one. Like someone suffering doesn't make you suffer. Someone suffering elicits empathy. But the point is you get the point, and that's what's important. So I want you guys listening to consider how powerful it would be to be able to do what I call flipping the happy switch inside of other people deliberately. Anytime you want. And we do this first with our body language and our face before we speak. So then we would get into vocal tonality, but we're not going to right now because I'm going to explain a little bit about how to actually have warm, open, approachable body language. And it's deceptively simple. It's simple, but it's not easy. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a primer right here. I'm backing away from the mic a little bit. I'm raising my arms up as tall as I can. There you go. Bring them up. Now, this will, come on, guys. This will straighten your spine out. This will put your spine into a confident, calm position. Now, keep the spine tall like you have it, and put the palms forward, and then lower your arms. But keep your spine, Joss, the way it was. Don't drop your head down. There you go. So this is an ideal sort of default posture. What you'll find is that your chest is a little bit expanded, but it's not puffed up, right? Here's what happens. And there's no way to sort of avoid going into a little bit of technical stuff here. When the spine is tall and the shoulders are down and relaxed, our body is telling our brain, our hypothalamus specifically, everything is good. The hypothalamus then responds by creating more dopamine and more oxytocin, more endorphins. The endorphins shoot through the body and reinforce the idea that everything is fine.
So forced biochemical reaction to... Okay.
Right. So then what happens? A positive, what do you call it? It is a virtuous cycle is created, right? So we put the body in a good position. It tells the brain everything's good. The brain responds by sending the chemicals that it sends when things are good. That keeps the body in the good position. That keeps the chemicals coming. Essentially, that's confidence. People see that in us and they respond to it by going, everything's good with this person.
Okay.
So it's more than just stand tall, look straight in the eye, have certain body language. I want you to know why.
Getting to the biochemical, is it something similar to what we talk about when people are discussing pheromones and the way your body emits?
Not pheromones. No, it's not. Well, I mean, everything in your chemistry will change because when you get scared, nervous, or in fight or flight, then you've got cortisol and adrenaline and other chemicals shooting through you. That changes your pH, that changes your whole chemistry, and so you do emit different signals. But also your body language changes. So if I come up to you and I'm rigid and tense, you're going to automatically be rigid and tense because you can't be relaxed around someone who's tense, you know. If I come up to you and I'm totally relaxed and open and my vocal tonality reflects a relaxed, open mood, that's going to make you feel relaxed and open. That'll be the simplest way of putting it. So from a public speaking perspective, how powerful would it be? How helpful to you would it be to know that before you speak a word on stage, you can present this calm, open, confident message that's going to make everyone else feel, oh, this guy's got it. Everything's good.
So you can literally go on stage without saying a word and just own the room.
When I used to perform, so I learned this stuff through a combination of I had to figure out communication skills to literally save my life over and over and over again when I was young. Then I went and I got interested in acting. Then I got interested in music. Then I got interested in public speaking. And there's massive overlap between the three disciplines. So I would go out and perform in my bands, right? And I would do just what you were saying. I would walk out silently. I would stalk out on stage because once you get this stuff, you can play with it. I'd stalk out on stage, right? And I'd just stare at the audience. And then all of a sudden, I would just smile and just change my whole positioning. And I'd watch a ripple go through the crowd. I kid you not, man. It was the coolest thing. And you could just see everybody going, oh, it's all good. And then the music would start and, you know, but it works. It works like clockwork. It works every time. Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. The only time I had it not work ever in all of my performances was when we played, we got a last minute show at a biker bar. And we weren't the kind of music that bikers typically listen to. And so, to a man and woman, the whole crowd ignored us. They didn't even make eye contact. So I couldn't even like connect with anyone and get them going. And that was the only time I couldn't get that to work. But as long as they're there and they're looking at you and they're sort of paying attention to you in their space, these messages always work.
As long as it's receptive to something, you're able to draw them in further.
Well, I think that like using the example of the biker bar, it was a deliberate ignoring of the band because it wasn't the kind of band that they wanted to hear. You know, and so everybody was just like, screw those guys. You know? So the simple piece I just gave about extending your arms above your head, letting your spine get nice and tall, and then dropping your arms and letting your shoulders relax and slightly roll back. Or said another way, push your heart out just a little bit. Just like a quarter of an inch changes everything. See that?
I feel tension like right there. Is that supposed
you have to get used to that. That's because you don't stand up straight. Yeah, I know. Sorry. But yeah, most of us, it feels a little awkward at first to actually stand up straight. And we want to go back to this slightly curled spine, you know, which is a protected position.
Right. It's. I can feel when you did that and you went around and it just. It's not. It's not the normal position. Your spine is. I'm used to having my spine.
Well, actually, it's supposed to be the normal position. But the thing is that emotional state, until we learn that we can control emotional state through our position, it works the other way around. Our emotional state dictates our position. And very few of us, without deliberately doing it, are, you know, calm, open, and confident all the time. It takes practice. And that's why I said that the things I'm about to show you are simple, but they're not easy. Right? It takes practice. By the way, guys listening, all of this stuff takes practice. You don't go to the gym once to get fit. It's the same with this.
What the fuck? Are you kidding me? I thought it was like a magic pill you can just take, ingest, and it's all done.
Well, I mean, you can always hire me to speak for you. And that would be like as close to the magic bullet as you can get. But but here's the thing, and this is where I'd like you guys to sit up and pay attention. The difference when you adopt these things, when you learn how to deliberately put whatever message you want out into a room before you speak, you can't understand how powerful it is till you experience it. You just can't. It's so much fucking bigger than being a good public speaker. Like, now, I was a skinny kid. I was scared. I was a drug addict. I was a social outcast. I had a massive story about how I didn't fit in. No one would ever accept me. I had to always look for the damaged goods people to connect with because I was an outcast. I turned all of that around, and I'm not here to brag, but what I'm here to tell you is I know exactly what it feels like to feel like you just don't belong. You're not welcome. People don't like you. They don't trust you. They don't want to make eye contact with you. And I know, going through a process, now I can dictate with an uncanny accuracy how interactions will go with other people.
Have you had people have the opposite effect? Say, really have people trust and have all that stuff coming across, but they're not sure how to deal with it?
Well, Not exactly, but you bring up a good point. What I'm teaching you in a way is the beginnings of how to be a very charismatic person. And when we see someone who's charismatic, a lot of things happen inside of us that the person who is like training, so I teach public speaking, and then with some people, I will do a deeper charisma work with them. Like I'll teach them how to be charismatic, how to really light up control how much other people respond to them. It's hard to describe the difference, but charisma itself in the abstract is just deeper, and it takes more work, it takes more courage, and it takes more willingness to challenge and overcome your beliefs. But there's a price that comes with that, Joss, because when you see a very charismatic person, what we tend to do is over-ascribe their abilities. In other words, when somebody has very powerful leadership charisma, right? This is what cult leaders do, oddly enough. Cult leaders are always very charismatic. So what happens is the people who fall sway to them start to expect that person who is charismatic will take care of everything. And we start to actually, in the most extreme cases, we actually regress in the presence of someone like that. So you've got to be careful, right? If you get really yeah, man. It's really bizarre. At one point, when I was undoing the damage that had been done to me from being raised in a cult, I started asking myself, how could the people, my parents, the other kids in the group, their parents, how could they let us live in such a situation, right? And I worked with a great therapist in my 30s who specialized in cult survivors. And she explained to me, she said, you got to understand, when people fall under the sway of a charismatic leader, they forfeit their adult decision-making abilities. So we had like 25, 30-year-olds who had regressed back to being like emotionally 15, 16, and 17. And she told me, she said, we find this across the board with adults who find their way into cult environments. The emotional regression is a predictable, consistent response to that environment. And so let's say you show like Steve Jobs' level of leadership charisma, right? But you're also nice, because we know Steve Jobs was a bit of a prickly guy. He was incredibly driven and not easy to get along with. If he had been easier to get along with, he would have run a real risk of having his employees just assume that he could do no wrong, because he was so powerful in his leadership charisma. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's almost that power is a confronting thing for a lot of people, and myself included. It's the power you have over people, and the sway that you have is intense, especially when you can see that you can physically see them changing their actions and behaviors based on what you do. It's like,
Yeah. Well, and that's why I'll teach anybody these sort of people skills that are through the lens of public speaking, but I won't teach anybody charisma. I'll teach certain people charisma, but I wouldn't just like let anyone come to me out of the blue and say, hey, I'd like to, retain you for 6 months as my charisma coach. There would be a process of vetting that person. And unless they had heard me on an interview saying something like this, they'd never know they were being vetted. Because I got to make sure that you're not going to go out there and, use this stuff for evil, man. I've got an obligation here.
It's the same in that pickup artist world. The powers you have and the stuff sway you teach is freaky. Like, I know myself personally, I used to do face-to-face sales. So I had people, I literally have them walk around in a circle, and I'll just show them like, what is going on here?
Well, I think it's something that it would be irresponsible to just teach anyone who came along, because it is persuasion. It is manipulation potentially, right? And it is a deep set of skills in how to sway other people. And so I am of the firm belief that not everyone deserves to know those things.
Oh, jeez. Okay. So we're getting a little bit into this interview. What are we covering next? What is it?
Let's talk a little bit about vocal tonality.
Okay.
You know, I gave you a little bit of a peek into body language. And so, by the way, the piece about body language that we covered, the idea there is to be always paying attention to your own posture. You know, and there's more to it than that as well. If you want to connect with somebody, like let's say at a networking event, which is usually most people would rather have their teeth drilled, right? You want to be able to break into a conversation at a networking event. There are two pieces that need to be present. One is look for the people that in their body positions, they have an opening. They're not facing each other directly, because that's a closed orientation. And the body language there says, whether they know it or not, says don't be part of this. So if the two people are like their chests are not facing directly at each other, but they're talking with their chests sort of facing out a little bit, that's open. You can approach that. When you want to approach a conversation that's already happening, first of all, it won't always work. You have to accept that, right? Because some people just won't pick up on the cues. But the best thing you can do is just stand feet pointing right at the person you want to talk to, and chest facing directly at their chest or face. And you'll be surprised. You'll be amazed, in fact, if you ever try this. It just makes people pay attention to you. You know, it's so interesting. So there's your.
People don't have that direct line. So I think I've seen personally, you look at someone, people are afraid to look at the other person directly.
Yeah.
As soon as you do, they have to look at you. They have to see why.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And at that point, you need to have a nice open-ended icebreaker. You know, you got to be ready with something that sounds good and is like, so are you guys enjoying this event so far? What's your favorite part been? You gotta be ready with that open-ended question. Don't just stand there and stare at them. Exactly. So now let's talk vocal tonality. You're going to want to know how to have the tonality that you choose support the intent. Let's use that example where you're trying to get involved in a discussion that's already happening, right? Most of us don't pay any attention to our vocal tonality. It's been there all of our lives and we take it for granted. Here's the thing with that. We connect to the human voice in a way that we don't connect to anything else. It is more emotional for us than any other thing. It started when we were in the womb and our mother would speak. And because we were in fluid, it would literally cascade over our whole body. So the most ancient thing that we can connect to is human voice. So that's the perspective I want you to take when you're thinking about using your vocal tonality. And we all know somebody who talks a little bit too much in their nose, don't we?
You mean my strains, mate?
Yeah. And, you know, with the Aussie accent, it's even better. Hello, mate.
I suppose I don't have an Australian accent, so there you go.
So, let me get back on track here. Okay. When when paying attention to our vocal tonality, we need to let's ask ourselves a conceptual question. Do we enjoy listening to a guitar player? If we had two guitar players and one plays one annoying note over and over again, and the other plays beautiful sweeping lines with spaces in them that reach new heights and soar and go low and change and create a tapestry, which one do we want to listen to more?
I feel like the one note guy.
Yeah, probably the one note guy. And you'll know, because when that guy comes along, it's going to sound like this. He's going to keep talking to you, and no matter what he says, it's just going to be this one thing that just keeps coming. And
Yeah. To listen to.
And it makes me want to gently put an ice pick in my eye. So the third element I teach is storytelling, but storytelling will not exist verbally without the ability to take your vocal tonality and change it. Move it around. Inflect. Deliberately put the appropriate emotion into the appropriate parts of what you're saying. So back to that example of trying to sort of break into a discussion at a networking event. I would always open up with, I always teach people, pay attention to your starting pitch, where you always habitually start from, and just lower it a little bit. So it might sound like this. Normally I talk from here, so I want to do this. Normally I talk from here, so I want to start from here. It's just a tiny little shift. Suddenly my voice becomes much rounder, much richer, much more inviting. And what we don't know consciously, but what happens subconsciously, is my voice becomes much more authoritative.
By changing it down a notch, or
Simply by changing it, simply by lowering the pitch just a little bit. Now in the course, I go over a very specific way to find your dominant tone or your vocal sweet spot. But for now, we're not going to go into that.
that's
Just understand that 7 or 8 years ago, I spoke from here. This is where I always started from. And it's hard for me now to even go back to this pitch and not make my tone round and partially from my chest. But when I learned this, now I always start from here. And I don't even have to ask your opinion. I know that this is not as good as this. And everybody listening is going to say the same thing.
I've seen when you do your live videos, it's just like you said before, it's a charismatic tone that has people listening to you and really enjoying what you have to say. It's
So I think it was the great motivational speaker Bob Proctor. I think it was Bob Proctor who said that without emotion, a message won't stick. You know, he was being asked about why he spoke the way he did on stage. He said, you have to have emotion, because the message by itself, it just won't stick. People just won't remember it. You know, our content is maybe 8% of our overall impact.
on that note, I'm seeing you use your hands a lot when you're speaking. Is that part of the process to express?
It is. It is. I go into that a lot deeper, of course, in the body language element of the program. But for me, now that I live this every day, I automatically emphasize with my hands as well. So your body language, all of it wants to support the tonality. The tonality then wants to support the message. Yeah. Can you guys see this out there?
Hey guys in Facebook land, can you see us doing this presentation?
Exactly. Exactly. So this right here, not so good. But this right here, powerful.
It's the mafia pose, Italian family's like. Mafioso. Do the power thin, and you speaking.
As you can see, I'm way too permissive with my children. So the takeaway on vocal tonality, I'll give you two takeaways. One, Pay attention to where you normally start speaking from, the pitch, and lower it just a little bit. Just bring it just a little bit down. Right? 2, for the love of God, put some variation in your inflection. Put some inflection in your inflection. That is the worst thing we can do, is to have our range of inflection be like this tiny little, kind of like at the excited points, it goes up to here, but then at the emotional points, it only goes to here. You've got to inflect. The more that you can make your inflection natural and kind of like paint the picture of the words, the more that you're going to create the emotional content that sticks.
Okay, so examples of that would be?
Examples of it would be, let's see. Let me give you examples of someone who had really poor use of tonality. And in fact, they had really poor body language too. And they used to be the president of the United States. And I'm talking about George Bush. You remember George Bush? Do you? You remember him? He was a disastrous public speaker. And in fact, interestingly, if you must be paying attention to some extent to the politics going on over here, because how can you not? It's such a freak show.
My newsfeed, and it's still coming up everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. You've got one candidate for president who, say what you will about their politics, this is not that discussion, is highly polished, a consummate professional public speaker. And you've got one who, content-wise, all they do is agitate fear and make vague promises. Tonality-wise, there's almost no variation at all. And expression and body language-wise, this is the part that blows me away. Expression and body language-wise, the candidate who I'm not naming consistently projects contempt, disdain, and arrogance. And I just can't believe it when I watch it. I can't believe that no body language experts are coming forward to point this out. That's just amazing to me. So it's very hard to separate our emotional politics from just watching these things. But if you want to see an example, especially if you don't live here, because you've got some stake in it if you live here one way or the other, find these two speaking, turn off the sound. Just watch the body language. And report back to me what you see. But I can tell you something, and I realize I'm going a little off topic into a tangent here. There are certain things in the realm of facial expressions that are called universal badges. And this is expressions that mean the same thing to everyone in the world. One of the biggest ones is the crooked smile. The crooked smile always means contempt. Oh. Every single place in the world, from indigenous people in the rainforest, recognize a crooked smile as contempt. And this is the thing that is so amazing to me, is like, I can't believe no one's calling this part out in this process, if you can call it a process. It's more like a freak show. But, and then this one, the pursed lips and the head up, that's also contempt. That's contempt and arrogance. And it's going to be the same no matter where you are. You can go to China and make that facial expression to someone, and they're going to think that you just insulted them. You can go anywhere. Everybody recognizes that for what it is, So, I know we were more talking about tonality, but you will see one of those candidates use their tonality to create emotion. You'll see the other one not pay attention to their tonality, and as a result, their tonality projects superiority and arrogance. Because that's their default position. One of those candidates, who shall remain nameless, clearly thinks of themselves as superior to everyone else. Clearly is not afraid to act in an arrogant fashion. And the body language and the tonality just backs it up.
Who's the TV show that goes into this? Lie to Me. Lie to Me.
Is it the mental? Which one is it?
Lie to Me.
Oh, Lie to Me. This is not precisely Paul Ekman's work, or Doctor. Is it Ekman or Lightman? I don't remember. I can't. I think Lightman was the actual guy and Ekman was the character. He deals more with micro expressions, and you could have a field day there with our two presidential candidates as well. But I'm talking more about not the micro expressions, not the ones that pass in a third of a second. I'm talking about the sustained expressions, the sustained tonality, the sustained body language, the stuff that's not even trying to be hidden. So just a recap for your listeners or for the attendees, body language, you want to change instantly the message you send, have a tall, erect spine, have calm, relaxed shoulders, and push your heart out just a little bit. I mean, like a quarter of an inch is enough, is all it takes to change the signals to the brain that send the good chemicals and not the bad chemicals. That's my gross oversimplification.
That pushing your heart out part is actually interesting. The way you do it is, I understood that, and they're up and down, shoulders back, but that extra bit is just doing the heart, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a new position.
Yep, and it totally feels it. And so, with vocal tonality, pay attention to your starting pitch and lower it, and become used to starting from there. And then once you get used to starting from there, put inflection and change into your voice.
Okay, so you work out what your starting pitch is, then you put in inflection and tonality and just add extra depth to your voice. That's straining my voice a little. But
let's have you do it right now. Okay. Just go ahead and start. So for you, it's okay. This is where you start from right here. Yes. This is about your starting pitch. Okay. So now I want you to start from here. I want you to lower it just a little bit. See that?
Yeah. Starting from here, it's a little bit. You really feel the back of the throat, like there.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So what I want you to do is use a visualization of your voice actually coming from your chest and coming out your mouth, rather than your voice just being created in your head.
Okay, so if you do it more as that, you can kind
of right there.
Yeah, that's right there. You can feel it changing the pitch
and
tonality. It's just
yeah.
Here,
and your voice got about twice. Your voice got about twice as round and warm.
That is a scary change. That's
That's
incredible.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to begin speaking from there all the time.
Jeez. Crazy. That's good. That is something else.
Yeah. And you'll find excellent. And you should find that if you push your heart forward a little bit and you lower your tone a little bit, initially it feels a little bit vulnerable. Like I would expect and predict that there'd be an emotional correlation to making those changes. And so if you guys are listening and you start trying this, expect that it's going to feel a little uncomfortable at first. But as you go on, what you'll see is in little ways, people will just start responding to you more favorably. Which is not to say they don't like you already.
I'm probably not speaking to you. I'm just, my posture is slowly rolling back and I need to...
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that.
It's interesting.
when I do this stuff from my chair, I always lean forward in the chair. And so that I can actually push the chest forward a little bit and keep the spine tall. Because if I lean to the back of my chair, it's just a slope, and it closes everything down.
Okay, that's different again. I had the back and it was curving, but going forwards.
Yeah.
Let's pull it forwards. That's different again. It's wow. Okay.
There you go.
Cool. Very cool. Hey, man,
Absolutely, my friend.
What do you have any final words, or is there more you want to divulge?
There's no way to just touch on storytelling. Storytelling is probably the part in my course, in my teaching, in my curriculum that requires the most focus. And so it wouldn't do anyone a service to just kind of give a peek into it. But I will say this. I will say that good stories connect us. We learn from stories in a way that is deeper than learning from rote information. And there's a reason for that too. All of this stuff you can trace its roots back to survival level stuff. What I teach in the storytelling module is not hold your hand and help you write a story. It's the principles that make a story engaging. It's the principles that allow you to tell a story in a way that triggers certain parts of people's minds. And that's what you want to do. You want to tell details, for instance, in a way that paints a picture so that you can emotionally and what's the word I'm looking for? It's been a long day. Not intellectually, but so if I say to you, it's a warm, sunny afternoon here, you say, okay, great, that's nice. But if I say to you, it's about 80 degrees out here with a gentle breeze, the sun is shining, but the sky has got that pale blue that it has in the fall, and there are some wispy, whitish pink clouds because the sun's starting to set.
Painting a mental picture right there.
Right. And there's a very predictable response that your brain will have when I give you those kind of details. Your brain will say, your imagination will say, oh, we can step into that. And once you get their imagination sort of bought in, then you're giving them an experience that your brain can't tell the difference between that and a real experience.
Let's use that conversely, and it was a bleary, dark, cold day. The wind was chilling, and
exactly
shivers down the spine. It's totally changed the mood of what people would be motively feeling.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to get to. But let's go back to the happy, sunny shine.
Yeah, well, whichever one you want to use, the point is the more sensory-rich detail you provide, the more they can step inside of what you're saying. When they can step inside of what you're saying, it's a shortcut to know, like, and trust. Ding, 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 ding.
Okay, before public speaking is always been huge. Oratory is how culture shares stories, shares messages. But
right,
I think we've gone through a stage where we had that oratory stage where it was passed on directly from generation to generation, tribal kind of thing. And then we went to technology and more individualism, and then we kind of have become isolated as a society. But we're now trying to reconcile that in a way with technology through video and other stuff.
I think you're on to something there. The only part that I like to add to that discussion, because it's a popular discussion, is that the more technology creates the potential for us to isolate, the more value we will place on being able to connect. And so the person who can connect, whether it's over Skype, hell, over text or the written word, or in person, is the person that everyone cherishes. And so if I know how to make you feel amazing because of our connection, let's say hypothetically, let's turn this into a business, a cold calculated business thing. If you have a choice between my speaker training program and two others that you haven't connected with the people, the odds are you're going to come to me. And it's much more than that, but we always want to know sort of the practical ROI aspect of things, And so the more that technology gives us the opportunity to isolate, the more we value connection. And I see this all over the place. In fact, what we're in now is called the connection economy. It's called the network economy,
That's insane. That is insane, man.
So, if I was gonna say one final thing, it's if anybody is listening and would like to know more about the 1,000 Speakers Academy, then you can just private message me directly. Or you can go to my website, mannywolfe.com, and the 1,000 Speakers Academy page on my website pops right up. But, we don't take everyone. Not everyone is admitted. But if you are admitted, it will be life-changing.
Okay, if you're watching this live, we'll send Manny a friend request. I'm sure he'll accept. He might not. And if
I will.
There you go. Until his positions remain open. If not, we'll add some links up on my profile and on the website when it's up there. Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for
excellent. Looks like
joining us.
It's been my pleasure. I do have to get on to the next call and even to dinner, but it's been awesome, man.
Cool, man. All right, well, enjoy. I'll stop the stream and speak to you soon.